We're recording. Awesome. So I went ahead and started recording. Like I said, hi everyone. My name is Zaira. I'm the interim first year experience program coordinator here, and I'm happy to introduce y'all to today's workshop with Professor Patrick Leong. He's here and he's going to be doing the scholarship essay writing. But before I give the mic over to the professor, I want to give y'all let y'all know a couple little things. We are going to be doing an evaluation form at the end of the session, and this is where you can provide your feedback for our presenter today. You can also let us know if you're attending today for extra credit by putting your professor's information, and I will be contacting professors. I will also be putting the link in the chat and be putting the YouTube channel if you, for some reason, can't. Oh, a couple of people. If you, for some reason, cut off or anything like that, the YouTube channel will have today's session, and it also has last time's session. And we also have a DVC FYE Instagram page that we all that we would like y'all to follow. We also post a bunch of workshops on that page, so definitely check that out. So with that all said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our lovely presenter, Professor Leong.
Thank you, Zaira, very much for that introduction and also for your help in coordinating this college success workshop. And not only this one, but all of them. Students, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to become more acquainted with the college and also to find out what resources and information are available to you so that you can be successful. And so please check out the first year experience page and everything else that they have to offer. I don't know if we'll be having a welcome day or if it already passed, but maybe Zaira could talk about that a little bit later on. However, we're here today to talk about the DVC scholarship application and essay writing. My name is Patrick Leong, Professor Patrick Leong. I'm an English professor here at DVC. I have been, working here for 30 years, teaching English and ESL, and I've also been the scholarship coordinator here for several years. I also work with the Puente statewide office in running their scholarship program as well, and have been very fortunate to assist many students in helping them to achieve ways to finance their education. And that's probably why you're here today, to learn ways on how to finance your education outside of FAFSA or financial aid that is granted to you, because scholarship is, again, free money that is given to you for your educational journey, your experiences, that does not have to be paid back. So perhaps rather than getting a loan, you want to apply for scholarships. And it's always good to apply for scholarships here, because every year that you participate in the process, you are increasing your selectivity, meaning that you are getting better at the application process. Remember, when you are applying to the university for transfer or applying for scholarships, internships, and even jobs, you know that you're competing with many people, and there are more opportunities and there are more people than there are opportunities, like admittance to the university. They only have so many slots. With scholarships, there'll be 100 people for one scholarship. So each time you go for the process, it has something to be said for you in learning how to become a better applicant and to be able to increase your selectivity. So that's what we want to do today. And now that we're at the community college here at DVC, is a good place to practice, because we do know that when you transfer to university, it's going to cost much more to fund your education than it is here at DVC. So might as well practice. And you will notice that even attending this workshop is going to help you write your essay for the Common App if you are applying through that. And also if you're applying to the University of California, I think that this workshop will help you writing your PIQs, your personal insight questions. And again, it is because there are going to be many more applicants than there are spaces or opportunities available to you. So we want to help you put your best foot forward so you can present yourself to the committee so that you are able to achieve your goals. One other person that would normally be here with us today is Sherry Keller, who is our scholarship program coordinator. Unfortunately, she could not be here today. So I'm going to just go over a little bit of what she would have covered for you. So Sherry Keller is the DVC Scholarship Program Coordinator. And if you want any information on scholarships, you should go to the DVC website, and right here through the A through Z index, you would just click the S here for scholarship office, and the scholarship office website will come up. And this is a wonderful resource for you because it tells you what scholarships are available, how to apply for scholarships. And this is our last DVC scholarship workshop because the DVC scholarship application is due shortly. And you have to also submit your essay when you submit that. So this website is a wealth of information for you. And down here at the very bottom, it gives you contact information. You could email Sherry Keller at scholarships@dvc.edu, and she will respond to your email. Or you can call her at 925-691-1132. I'm sorry, that's her fax number, 925-969-2094, and you can leave her a message. Once again, her name is Sherry, Shari Keller, Keller. Okay. And it says here that there is limited in-person services. So you can see her in person if you feel comfortable from 9 to 3 p.m., but also remotely on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday from 8 a.m. to 4:30, and on Fridays 8 to 1. Okay, so just contact her with the phone number at the bottom, or also email her at scholarships@dvc.edu. Now, Sherry, she stewards all of our internal awards. So as you know, the scholarship application, which has been open since October, one application makes you eligible for over 80 opportunities. But that scholarship application includes the application and answering some questions about who you are, in addition to identifying what your financial need is, also looking at what community service you've done and or leadership opportunities. And so what happens is that when you submit that application, then it will match you with what scholarships are eligible based on the criteria of the scholarship and which you input into the application. The two other main parts of the application are the essay, which we're going to work on now, but also the letters of recommendation. So each applicant must submit 2 letters of recommendation. One letter of recommendation must be from a DVC faculty member. Faculty members are professors, but also counselors or librarians, okay? So any of them can write a letter of recommendation for you. Your second letter of recommendation could be another DVC faculty member, or it could be somebody from the community. Maybe if you do community service for the whatever organization, maybe you have that person write a letter for you. You can have your employer write the letter of recommendation for you. What you cannot have is that you cannot have a relative, a family, or close friend write a letter for you. That would automatically disqualify you from any scholarship opportunities. Okay, so the scholarship, the recommendation for the letters of recommendation, it does ask the relationship that you have between the applicant. So make sure that it is not a family friend, a relative, or a friend in general. Okay, now the all you need to do for your letter of recommendation is you need to put the email address in. If you look at the application, you need to put an email address on who those recommenders are going to be for you. What happens is that then internally, email is generated to that person who's your recommender to let them know that they need to submit a letter recommendation for you. You don't want to leave your recommenders hanging blindly. You should inform them that you're putting them down to write a letter of recommendation for you. In addition, you want to make sure that you prep that person to be able to speak highly for you. So they should know what your goals are, your educational goals, your career goals, your leadership, your community. So they need to know something about you so they can speak highly for you. Okay. So their deadline is going to be 1 week after your deadline to get those letters in. And then once that deadline has passed, everything is finished. All of the eligible applicants are sent to the scholarship committee. They begin to evaluate and review the applications. And then after that process is finished, they begin to match students with the scholarship and the requirements and also the desires of the donors. Okay. So if you need to know what scholarships you might be eligible for, you just need to go to this DVC scholarship link here, and all of the scholarships come up that tell you what their desire is, if it's community service, financial need, leadership, merit based, whatever it is that they're looking for. It'll tell you right there. Okay. So that is the DVC scholarship application. And that's what Sherry Keller would have mentioned to you had she been able to be here today, but she could not join us today. So having said that, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat as well, or you can ask them if you like. At the end, we'll have a Q&A, but Zyra will be looking at the chat, so if there's any questions, they could come up that way as well. So I want to say congratulations to you, first of all, for attending this workshop. This is the first step in, as I said, learning how to finance your education, but also the first step in helping you to make yourself increase your selectivity to make you a good candidate for not only scholarships, but also for, as I said, transfer, jobs, and internships as well. So today we will cover the personal essay and writing an effective personal scholarship essay. And you do want to have pencil, paper around. We are going to be doing some brainstorming activities that may help you to begin to develop some topics. And also so you can write down some notes as well on points that you may need to include in the essay. We're also going to talk a little bit about the structure. This is not the easiest essay to write, academically in your classes, particularly in an English class, but I would think writing across a curriculum, when you write an essay in the introduction, you generally have a thesis statement. Well, there's no thesis statement really in a personal essay. The thesis is going to be more implied than it is going to be explicitly stated, because in an essay you explicitly state what that thesis is, but you're not going to do that in a personal essay. Instead, it's going to be more about, this is who I am. That is what your thesis is, but you're not going to write that as your thesis statement, at the end of the introductory paragraph. So you don't want to say, like, in conclusion, this is who I am. That's too formal and crass. You got to be much more creative about how you approach the topic and the information that is the evidence for you to be a strong candidate for a scholarship. So having said that, I don't have my contact information here, but if you do need to contact me a little bit later on, in the chat, I will put my email address, but it's basically the same as it is for all faculty member here. First name, initial, last name @dvc.edu. So my contact information would be pleong@dvc.edu. All righty, let's go ahead and get started. So on a blank piece of paper, we want to do this first activity, brainstorming activity, which is called the timeline activity. And this is a valuable tool to use because you want to think about recency, first of all, within the last 5 years. And you also want to think about significant events within the last 5 years that have occurred to you that may be of significance, that you'll be able to inform the committee about. Recency is very, very important because some of you might think, oh, I have a letter of recommendation, from 3 years ago. Well, that's a little bit too late. Letters of recommendation for sure need to be written within the last 2 years. So if you just graduated high school and you applied for scholarships and you had a high school instructor write a letter of recommendation for you in the past, you want to make sure it was within the last 2 years. Again, if you do have a former high school teacher write a letter of recommendation for you, that's okay to do. But again, remember, if they were your freshman teacher back in, you're already looking, your recency has not been with the last 2 years. So for the letters of recommendation, if you are a high school student, I wouldn't go back to anybody further than junior year. So junior, senior year would be okay for them to write you a letter of recommendation. But in a timeline, which is also known as perhaps a vision board, that many of you may have done in a counseling class, you may have done this in a psychology class, in other classes, but we use a timeline once again to plot out events in our life that have been very significant to you. And even though I said go within the last 5 years, if you're a returning student, or if you had an event that has impacted you prior to the last 5 years, that may be worthy of development for you. No matter what the event is, what you need to show is that you need to show growth, reflection and growth. You need to show committee members that you have reflected upon this experience, and due to what you experienced, how you have grown, how your life has changed, how that event has been significant to you in the past to make you who you are today. And a timeline is important to us as well because it enables you as students to reflect on where you've been, so then you can tell people like scholarship committees where you are going. And that type of philosophy for me is something I learned through the great Harlem Renaissance writer, James Baldwin. In his notes from an autobiographical writer, he says that it's the past that makes the present coherent. You have to know where you've been in order to know where you're going. And I think if we use that philosophy, that's going to help show some reflection and how we grew and how we learned. So if you could, on your blank piece of paper, begin to identify and plot out key moments of the last 5 years of your life. So begin with, February of 2017, and then you're going to end at February of 2022. What significant events have happened to you in your life? So you're going to put the dot on the timeline, and then above it, you can identify what the event was. And then on the bottom part, how that event is significant to you. Why is it significant to you? And as I said, you can kind of go out of the timeline. Like if you're a returning student and you've had children, the birth of your children could be something that you would write about. But even if you are a recent high school graduate, or 18, 19-year-old, maybe you had the death of a parent that occurred prior to 2017. Again, that might be something that you want to write about. If you have those events that are prior to 2017, just write them or put a dot before the February, and you want to perhaps put those there. But it would definitely need to be a very significant event for you. But you want to think of this again as you're plotting these out and you're thinking about different types of events that have happened to you. Think of it this way. If you haven't seen somebody in the last 5 years, like a friend, maybe, maybe a former coworker that's no longer a coworker, or maybe somebody you went to school with and you haven't seen them for 5 years, how would you bring them up to date on your life? Now, you're not going to tell them on the last 5 years and spend, an hour on each year's, you're just seeing them in passing. So that mentality makes you think, what are the key moments that I would tell them about? Well, if you're fresh out of high school, you graduated perhaps, maybe last year you graduated in the pandemic through June of 2022, high school graduation. Maybe you graduated in 2021. So maybe high school graduation is something that you want to identify. We know in, spring of 2020, the pandemic, So, maybe the pandemic has affected you guys in a variety of different ways that have been significant to you. Maybe you had a loss of job during the pandemic. Maybe you had some tragic event, which I hope didn't happen to you, but you had a family member that passed because of COVID. That's definitely a significant moment in your life. But maybe there's been happy moments in this time. Maybe, some of you got married, or maybe some of you had children during the pandemic, but definitely you could put the pandemic there, and then that would be something you could plot out. But why is the pandemic significant to you? That's when you need to reflect. How have you grown as a person? What did you learn about yourself in that pandemic, during the pandemic time? So just take about 5 minutes. I've been talking quite a bit. Maybe some of you have been plotting things out, but we'll just take about 5 minutes here so you can plot out what have been significant events to you within the last 5 years. And if you want to go beyond the last 5 years, that's okay. Again, it needs to be a very significant event. Plot it out on the top, identify it on the top of the timeline, identify it on the bottom, why it was significant to you. How have you grown as a person? Again, you're looking for events that have shaped your identity, have shaped who you are. It could be an event that has shaped a value and a belief. That's something that you would definitely want to address with the committee members. Okay, that's about 5 minutes on this activity. And again, part of what I would like to do in this workshop is to do some brainstorming activities to help you begin to think about how you might want to shape this essay. And at the end of the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about structure and organization. But the reason that I like to begin with brainstorming activities is because as an English instructor, we know that writing's a process. We just don't sit down and all of a sudden, write this essay out. We need to spend time thinking and planning before we actually start writing. And by doing that and following a process, you're more likely to be successful in not only completing the writing task, but also for it to be meaningful and have significance to you to fulfill the purpose that you want the writing purpose to complete. So I know one thing that I always teach my students in all my classes is that writing is a process. It's a series of steps that we use to get to the end product. And by doing that, not only are you able to complete the product, but maybe you may find writing enjoyable and it's not such a hard task. And as I said, this is such an important essay that can become quite difficult if you follow some sort of process. You're more likely to be somewhat successful here. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the writing an effective personal essay by kind of looking at the overview. Remember, for you, the personal essay is a place for you to distinguish yourself from other applicants, not only for scholarships, but also for admission to colleges, for internships, and eventually jobs. The essay is important for students because it is your opportunity to let the committee members know who you are and what aspects of your life make you an ideal candidate. We also know that it's an important part of the essay because it identifies who you are, but also it needs to be submitted with the application. Remember, what the essay does for you is it speaks for you. If you think of any interviews you have or how interviews are conducted, they're conducted in front of a panel of people. So your scholarship committee is your panel, but there is no verbal communication. Everything is on paper. So your essay, you want to think of your essay as if it is you standing up in front of the committee so that you are able to, have this interview with them. I'm sorry, I have to go back. So you can have this interview with the committee so they can see what makes you an ideal candidate and why not only you should be selected, but because of your characteristics, what scholarship donor is a good fit for you as well. Okay. There's other parts of the applications that will tell us other information, but really the aspects of your life is what the essay is really designed to do for you. Because remember that the purpose of the essay is really to give the opportunity to tell us about your background and other information that is not apparent in other parts of the application. So the essay is important because it allows writers to provide that insight about themselves on a very personal level. So yeah, we know that you may have a 4.0 GPA, but you might want to tell us about the struggle to get that, what you had to do to earn that 4.0 GPA. Or maybe, you got that 4.0 GPA while working 25 hours a week and or taking care of family. That's something to be admirable. And for the committee, we see that as being admirable because that background is like looking how hard you work compared to, say, another student who has a 4.0 GPA, but they could be several generation of college student and had a little bit more privilege than other students had. Maybe they went to live in a better area, were able to go to a better school, they didn't have to work as much, so they're able to do much more than the other student who has to work to help their family out while carrying studies as well. Remember, when the scholarship committee makes their decision on who is a good candidate and also who is a good match, they look at academic records, they look at financial need, and they also look at any type of personal attributes that you have that make you an ideal candidate. So when you're competing for these scholarships, if you think about how many students at DVC have 4.0 GPAs that also have financial need, how are we going to determine there's 20 students that have financial need with a 4.0 GPA? It then becomes the essay. It becomes a personal attributes that really is the tiebreaker. So that is why this essay is so important. For those of you who are part of AGS, Alpha Gamma Sigma, the California Community College Honor Society, which I was a faculty member for at DVC for 11 years, and I also served on the AGS Scholarship Committee. It was so difficult because when we had to give those awards out, everyone that was nominated basically had a 4.0 GPA and they all had needs. We had to then determine who was going to get that award. It came down to those personal attributes once again. So when everybody is tied in terms of their application, SAT scores, but we're not using those anymore, academic records, need, community service, leadership, they have all of that. What other aspects of their background would actually push them to the top that would then break that tie between the other ones? So that's why this essay is important. And you also need to have a lot of time and effort to put into this. Okay. We will talk about now the essay. How long is it? How long? Oops, I'm sorry. Let me go back here to this other one. There was a question in chat, and how long should the essay be? It'll tell you on the instructions. So that's one thing that you need to do is read the instruction as they apply to the personal statement, whether it be for the Common App or it be for scholarships. At DVC, our scholarship limit is 500 words. And 500 words is basically about 2 pages, double space typed out. So therefore, you need to really get this all for yourself within 500 words. Yes, I saw a question. Lee Ames.
Hello, Professor.
Yes.
So I have a question about the description for the activities that I've joined. So do I have to write a paragraph for that, or do I just state it in point form?
No, that you would need to do it in a paragraph. And again, anything that you brainstorm now or today only becomes a part of the essay. I mean, the entire essay could be about that, but as we develop this workshop, you will see other topics that you would need to address. So whatever you brainstormed, you can talk about that perhaps within a topic. So even though it's 500 words and it may be only 5 paragraphs long, it's not your basic 5-paragraph essay with an introduction, with a thesis statement, subtopic 1, 2, and 3, which are your 3 body paragraph points, and finally the conclusion. That's the kind of essay that we really at DVC don't want students to write, that 5-paragraph essay, which I'm sure you've heard from a lot of your English instructors. But again, this essay is a little bit different. Those 5 paragraphs are going to actually be separate topics. So you can kind of think of this essay, for those of you that are applying or know about the University of California and the PIQs, how you write a specific paragraph of about 500 or 750 words on that one topic. That's kind of what you're doing. So you're going to be writing these paragraph topics that would have a good topic sentence that actually comprises the entire essay that goes to that implicit thesis statement of this is who I am. So as the workshop develops, we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more as well. And I think that you'll be able to perhaps see that as we continue to develop. So as we move on here, let's go to another brainstorming activity. And this brainstorming activity is called 4 squares. So basically all you need to do is take your paper, fold it in half, and then fold it in half again to get 4 squares. And once you do that on a blank piece of paper, as I'm talking, you might want to start filling this in, because I'm going to be giving you some kind of like examples of what you can write about in these four squares, and how these 4 squares can be effective in thinking about topics to develop those paragraphs that we'll talk about a little bit later, but I also had mentioned. So in the upper left-hand corner, you might want to talk about your name. Okay, your name is something that identifies who you are. So how do you feel about that name? Remember, how does your name identify who you are? In the essay, you're talking about who you are. So maybe through your name, there's a story that you can convey. Maybe you're named after somebody. Who are you named after? Are you like or unlike that person? Why are you named after that person? And what are the naming traditions in your family? Because that can get to values that you have, either culturally or familial values, that the committee would be interested in knowing about. That right there, those familial values are something that's not going to be apparent on the application, but it could be something that's important to you, because maybe it's about keeping your culture alive. For many males, they're juniors, or they're 1, 2s, and 3s. Why is that? Why is it important for your family for that to be carried on? I know a student who actually went to a scholarship interview because one thing that I said is that get to know Sherry Keller because of the external awards, particularly for those of you who are transferring. We don't have anything to do with those external awards, but the external awards are mainly for students continuing their education that go on to transfer studies. So those awards are going to be $12,000, $10,000, $7,000, $5,000, because that's much more than it costs to go to DVC. Our internal awards are between 500, 1,000, maybe 5,000. Although if you're a STEM major, the Bishop Foundation, the Bishop family, when we highlighted them one year, said, "Oh my God, we love what you're doing." They used to give us $20,000 for 4 or $5,000 scholarships. They kept that going, and now they've increased it 80,000 more, and they give the college $100,000. They give 4 additional scholarships at $20,000 for STEM majors now. Okay, so those external awards, when you go to them, and you can go through Sherry, I'm sorry, she has all of the applications and she can give you information. Sometimes you may have to go through an interview with them. So a student in one of my classes who ended up writing an essay about her name, they said, "Oh, tell me about yourself." And she said, "My name is," and then boom, she went right into her name essay that she wrote 10 pages on. Okay. So she was able then to talk about who she is through her name. So something about your name, the origin of it. My name is Patrick. It comes from the Latin of Patricius. It's a patron saint of Ireland. Does that have anything to do? Well, we're Catholic, and the Irish are Catholic as well. My middle name, Liang, very, very embarrassed about that name until I learned the naming tradition of my father, and that was my grandmother's maiden name. Okay. And then my last name, Liang, which is Chinese, which is part of a clan. Even though you see me on the screen, I don't look very Chinese because I'm biracial. I'm a Mexican from my mom and Asian from my dad. So, maybe I could talk about how that name, even though it's Asian and it's my clan name, how maybe it really doesn't identify who I am as a biracial person. So something about your name in that box. Okay. In the upper right-hand corner, your achievements. Even though your achievements can be on other parts of the application, those achievements may still be significant for you and added more to who you are that you can reflect upon. And by receiving those achievements, how you have grown further in that field. So for example, one student wrote on here that they received recognition for community service, which is, that's an achievement, right? But as he delved into that further, he was recognized by the Concord City Council for his achievements in youth that he was doing with Rotacare, and talked about all the stuff that he had gotten from that. So through that one achievement, he was able to reflect upon who he is, how he grew, and then how that capitulated him into more community service on campus through becoming a tutor, becoming a study group leader, and so forth. So you might want to think about achievements in the upper right-hand corner. In the lower left-hand corner, think about your bucket list. What is it that you want to accomplish? Because once again, these may be and probably are elements that you want to incorporate in your essay. They're going to want to know definitely where your transfer institution is. Where do you want to go? Why do you want to choose? Why did you choose that place to go to? What is your major? What do what do you want to study? What's your area of interest? You're going to have to incorporate that as well. So do it in this brainstorming activity. And when you're developing your major and you identify your career, you can think about, okay, this is my major and this is my career. Now show reflection and growth upon that, because this is what I want to do. What capitulated you to go perhaps into that major or that career? This could also be your bucket list thing, your wish list of, what are other things that you want to do in your life? Maybe you want to, throughout your lifetime, travel to every single state in the United States. That's a bucket list thing, right? Not transfer, but to visit all these different states, which will take a long time, because if you do one state a year, that's going to take you 50 years. That's a pretty big bucket list type of thing. But what else do you want to accomplish, and why do you want to accomplish that? Remember, in English, it's not what I want to do. What do I want to do? I want to get a degree. But instead, if it's why you want to do it, that's where the reflection comes in. You want to go to every 50 state before you die? Why? Why is it that you want to go to that? How is it going to enable you to grow? How is it going to affect your identity? And then in the last lower right-hand side, just think of embarrassing moments. And you might think, oh my gosh, why would I want to talk about an embarrassing moment? It was, not very pleasant. But that's the key right there. Because we always want to be comfortable in our lives, right? But when you're uncomfortable is actually when most of the growth happens, and that's when it occurs. Because when you're in an embarrassing moment, you are uncomfortable and you do anything, you find ways to get out of that embarrassment, to get out of that discomfort so you can be comfortable again. So by identifying an embarrassing moment and how you overcame that and how you learned and grew from that embarrassing moment is something that you might want to talk about. So let's just take about 3 more minutes here as I've been talking to fill this out here. Okay. So let's go ahead and continue to do that. And we'll take about 3 minutes to do that. So remember, you are looking at brainstorming just different topics that you have through experiences that you've had in your life. So perhaps some of us, we don't have the best family relationships. So maybe on what you want to accomplish in that square on the bottom left-hand side is that you want to be able to accomplish, values that have been outside of the family that you grew up in. So that kind of could be a bucket list thing. And that is something that you might want to write about as well. Okay. So again, if you're trying to accomplish something different than what you grew up with, that definitely could be something that would be on your bucket list. Or maybe it's even an achievement. Maybe you have already found like a partner, or you found, a good friend that their family is very different from yours, and you were able to become good friends with them and good friends with their family, that you started to develop values and beliefs different and outside of the family that you grew up with through this achievement of becoming and developing a very good relationship and friendship with somebody as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and continue on here because we may be running out of time. Let's see, oops. All right, so let me share my screen again here with you. And we're going from this slide that we had, our brainstorming activity number 2, we did the timeline to identify significant events, and then we looked at different events that we might want to write about as well through 4 squares. Okay, so here are the characteristics of the essay. Here are the topics that you may want to address through timeline experiences and the 4 square brainstorm that we did. Definitely, if you have any type of creativity or rare talent, that could be a paragraph that, or a topic that you include in a paragraph to develop this essay. These are our art people. These are our musicians. These are our people that are going to graphic design. Okay. These are our performers in, drama and things like that. Also, intellectual curiosity. This is a big one. You want to talk about how school and learning is a big part of your life, how that's going to enable you to achieve goals. Why is it that you want to continue to grow and learn intellectually? And it also may be that that'll happen beyond school as well. I talked about this already a little bit, achievement, exceptional recognition. If that has occurred for you, even though you might list the achievement someplace else in your application, then you can talk about receiving exceptional recognition, again, to show that reflection. And then by receiving that, how then have you grown and developed into the person that you are through the values that that achievement and that recognition has given to you. Ability to overcome hardships as well. So a major point that could be developed is challenges and obstacles that you had to overcome. Maybe you were a second language speaker and you had to overcome that. Maybe you're a first generation college student. That a lot of people don't think that that's hardships, but that is hardships. Ability to overcome hardships is that maybe you weren't able to give to community service because you had to work more with your family. Maybe your family immigrated over here and maybe you were born here, but English still is your second language. Maybe you have to translate for people. You have to help your siblings with their schoolwork. You have to go to the school meetings because your parents can't understand. So maybe you had to overcome a disability, physical, emotional, learning disability. So you would mention that, but you don't concentrate so much on describing the disability, but instead you concentrate more on what you learned by having that disability and overcoming it. You also will probably need to talk about your initiative, and that would be like your transfer institution, your goal, your motivation, that's to transfer again, any type of leadership that you have, and also the persistence that you have. Sometimes it takes us 10 years to get through school. Maybe some of you are, it's taking you 6 years to get to the university, but you're persisting, you're working on it a little at a time because you have family to take care of, you have to work, and you're going to school. So you're showing this balancing act, but you're not giving up. Definitely community service is a big part of a lot of scholarships, service to others. Remember, donors are doing community service by donating money and sponsoring a scholarship. They know that they believe in that we need to help our college students so we can continue to have a strong society and do something to help humanity. So what are you going to do? And maybe, as I said, you don't have that service now, but you need to address it. Why don't you have that service? But remember, giving to your family is service. Because you know what? If you got the scholarship, maybe you would be able to do service because you have to help your family and you maybe don't have to work as much. So now you can start working on giving to other people because you earned the scholarship. If there's any type of special spark that you have as well, that is something that you perhaps want to address. So these are all different bullet points and characteristics of topics that can comprise the essay. Are you going to write a paragraph for each one of these? No. Will you write a paragraph maybe on one of them? Well, yes, maybe, but you will also find that you will combine many of these topics or these characteristics in a variety of paragraphs to get at many of these points. So I hope you can see, once again, if the scholarship committee got an essay that addressed all of this, you can now see how these characteristics are reading yourself to the committee. You're like interviewing with the committee through an essay and look at all these wonderful points that you may have talked about. Okay. You're not going to be able to include all of them, nor do you need to include all of them, because some of us don't have creativity or rare talent. Some of us don't have, a special spark. Like I said, some of us, our service may be limited or our leadership may be limited. So we've already eliminated some topics here that we're not going to be able to address in paragraphs. So now get another piece of paper out, and we're going to do a brainstorming free write for just about, I would say, 7 minutes here. And this is starting to get at, what is your story? Remember, there's a variety of ways of brainstorming. You can do bullet points, which is kind of like the timeline. You can do, again, some more bullet points or a little bit of identification of topics through the 4 squares. This is actually writing. The problem with this journal writing is that sometimes students will journal write. They say, oh, I'm on a roll, and that becomes your rough draft and becomes your final draft. No, you need to stop and go back to see what is it you're actually addressing, what topics, what points have come up to identify topics. So for 10 minutes, you want to write, continuously write without stopping, because you know what, free writing, you're not correcting grammar. It's not, you're not doing editing, you're not doing proofreading. As we know, a main activity that a lot of students have is that they need to write every sentence perfect when they're first writing it out. We don't need to do that, okay? We're just trying to write out our story and develop some topics that we're then going to go back and look at to see what we can develop. So here's a prompt. On your piece of paper, write, I used to be, and put a blank, but now I'm, and put a blank, okay? And figure out how you used to be to how you are now. So here we go. I used to be a psychology major, but now I'm an English major. So talk about why you used to be a psychology major, why you had interest in that, and then why are you now an English major? Because what is it you're going to do with English? How is that going to help you in your career? Here we go. I used to have a 2.0 GPA, but now I have a 4.0 GPA. Wonderful. Why did you have a 2.0 GPA before? And now, how do you have a 4.0 GPA? What was going on with you in that 2.0 GPA time? And what was that spark? What was it that made you turn around to all of a sudden become a 4.0 GPA? Okay, well, I've had students in the past. I used to be a 2.0 GPA because I couldn't connect to anything in the classes. It wasn't culturally relevant. But now my 4.0 GPA, because I found my major, I found instructors who teach culturally relevant material. I can see myself. I can hear my voice in the curriculum now, where I couldn't see that before at all. Okay. How did you used to be, and how are you now? I used to want to transfer to a CSU, but now I want to transfer to UC Berkeley. Okay, why did you first pick CSU, and now all of a sudden, why are you going to Berkeley? Okay, let's go for about 5 more minutes on this. How did you used to be compared to how you are now? I used to be unmotivated about school, and now I'm fully motivated and engaged. Talk about that change, reflect upon it to talk about and show how you grew. Take about 2 minutes to wrap up your final thoughts and your ideas. If need be, if you are finished, you can go back and talk about the significance. Make sure you get that in there. How you've grown by the change. Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue now because we've done 3 brainstorming activities. So now we're going to get into the heart of the actual writing of the essay. And again, this is saved for the end of the presentation due to the fact that, as I said, writing's a process. And because it's a process, we're going to think about what we want to write about before we actually start organizing it and then write out our paragraphs. So we went through these characteristics of the essay. Remember, it is important to think of the essay both in terms of what you want to achieve and what you want to avoid. We know that you want to kind of sell yourself in the essay. You also want to read yourself to the committee, as I said, kind of like that interview that you have. That means that you want to take these certain episodes of your life and explain how those episodes have made you the right person for the scholarship, the internship, the admissions to the college, perhaps even the job. You also want the essay to reflect your mastery of the standards of neatness, good English skills, logical thought, clarity of expression, and organizational skills, although it's not a test, okay? And then we're going to talk a little bit towards the end here about blunders on what to avoid. But you saw that you were given a variety of ways to develop topics on how to be able to identify episodes in your life and to take them so that you're selling yourself. Shouldn't say selling yourself, to read yourself to the committee. You use the prompt, I used to be, but now I'm, and that's a good prompt to look at, to reflect upon how you used to be to how the way you are now. You looked at the timeline to take certain episodes of your life and explain how these episodes again have made you the right person from the committee. And both with the 4 squares and the timeline, we've thought about how you could bring a friend you haven't seen for a few years up to date on what's happening on your life. Because whatever it is that you identify, that's significant to you. And you now need to talk about why and how it's significant to you and how it has developed who you are. Also, through the 4 squares, you've been able to identify some of your current goals and your aspirations. And then the significance part is to evaluate how you've grown in the last 5 years. You could also talk through the 4 squares and a little bit through all of these activities, really what has inspired you, what has fired your imagination, because if you went into a particular field for a particular reason, you want to highlight, you want to what we call dramatize that reason. So for example, I have a former student who I recommended to be a tutor, who then became a SIL, a supplemental instruction leader, and now wants to become a teacher. So that work inspired her and fired her imagination to what she could do as far as being a teacher. So she dramatized and highlighted that experience as a way of how she grew into her major in her career. In the end, you can summarize exciting adventures, which is fine, but just don't tell what they are. You also need to add the reflection on why they're significant and how you grew by them. In the end, the essay really needs to cover these 3 areas. Committee members need to see the development of your character. That means they need to find out who you are, what your passions are, what life skills you mastered, and how you responded to adversity. Those questions embedded throughout your paragraphs in your essay shows development of character. Now, you're not going to do one paragraph on development of character, one paragraph necessarily on educational goals, and one on community. You could do that for educational goals and community, but it's better to really spread it out through a variety of paragraphs. Maybe one talks about educational goals, but what that in the educational goal we'll also see, maybe what you've mastered, or maybe in the educational goal you had to overcome some adversity. So, you can include it in there as well. So development of character, overall, the committee members needs to know your educational goals. Why do you want a degree? And what do you want your life to be like? And most importantly, then, how will school facilitate that vision that you have? What do you want to learn more about? That's the intellectual curiosity. And how will the educational process really contribute to your lifetime goals? And again, that could be when you talk about major, transfer institution, and career goals as well. But career goals and educational goals may be a bit different. So you may want to separate them out. There needs to be a sense of community in there. Because as I said, remember, people who establish scholarships are giving community service for a better community. So donors would like to know what is your sense of the individual's responsibility in the world? And most importantly, what have you done to make a contribution to the world? So what are your values? What is your sense of responsibility, not only to your community, but to your school, to your family, to your city, to humanity in general? So these 3 characteristics are the ones that really need to be highlighted throughout the development of the essay. So we want to now talk a little bit about organizing the essay, because now that we've done all that brainstorming, we're ready to start writing. So again, even though it's paragraph 1, it is an introductory paragraph, but it doesn't have that explicit thesis statement. It's going to be more implied in the development of your character, the educational goals, and your community. So in your introduction, as you guys know, you always should begin with a hook or some type of attention grabber that tells who you are. And these are examples from my scholarship essay that I wrote, when I was going through undergraduate and graduate school to help finance my education. So I began by saying, I'm a first-generation college student. And why is that a good attention grabber? Because now what I need to do is that I need to explain why I'm a first-generation college student. So that's getting back into my family history a little bit. And then I also want to talk about, why, but how being a first-generation college student is going to achieve my goals, or how it's going to develop and shape who I am. So after you have your attention grabber, then you want to introduce yourself to the committees through some basic background information about yourself. So if I go back to I'm a first-generation college student, well, why am I first-generation college student? Because my parents were immigrants. My mom from Mexico and my dad from China. And then give some basic information here. Again, why I'm a first generation college student, because my parents meant working in the fields and strive for their children to have a better life than physical labor. And then I'll develop that, because I remember, I'll never forget an episode in my life when, I wanted a bike. I wanted a brand new bike. And I told my mom and dad that I wanted this. And they said, go work for it. I said, how am I going to work for it? I'm in 5th grade. They go, do what we've done and go work in the fields. I said, okay. And guess what I learned? I went and worked in the fields, and that was the hardest physical labor I have ever done in my life. I'm from Fresno, so I worked in the grape fields down there, and working in 100 degrees plus is not pleasant at all. What did I learn? How did I grow? I learned that I want to be sitting in that air-conditioned library reading books. So education was the way that I needed to go so I could have a better life. And that's why my mom and dad did that to me. They wanted us to have a better life than they had. And the way that they taught me was to go do the work. Well, I went and did the work and found out it was exactly right. They steered me into the right direction, that education was the way I wanted to go. That's my introductory paragraph right there. To, again, not necessarily sell myself, but to read myself to the community. This is who I am. This is why I'm first generation. This is what it means being a first generation student. And this is what I learned about being a first generation college student, the importance and the value of an education. Your second paragraph then could talk about challenges or obstacles that you've overcome. Or if you don't have challenges and obstacles that you had to overcome, maybe this is a place for you then to talk about your meaningful volunteer leadership, internship, or work experience. Okay. And since I talked about being a first generation college student already in my first paragraph, I don't necessarily want to repeat that and say that that was a challenge that I had to overcome, even though for those of you who are first generation college students know how difficult that is, because I had no mentors in my life. That was the hardest thing for my parents to do, was to mentor me and to find mentors that I had that I could to continue to help me. So for my second paragraph, I decided to talk about meaningful volunteer leadership and internship work experience that I had. So after you identify that in your topic sentence, then you want to provide specific examples. So I would say, meaningful volunteer and internship experience I had has been working in the educational field. And so my specific information here was that in addition to being a full-time student, I also, at the time, volunteered 10 hours a month, and with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I had an internship with the Sanger Unified School District because I wanted to go into teaching. So at this particular point, what I want to do is, what did I learn from juggling all of that material? What did I learn about that community service? And what did I learn about being an internship? Well, I'll tell you what I learned about my internship at Sanger Unified School District is that I did not want to be a high school teacher, or lower than that, that I had to go into college right away. Okay, because that was just the age that I could handle. And so then that's what I learned from this experience, that if I'm going to contribute and I'm going to empower people, that I had to do it at this particular level, which meant I needed to get my master's degree, right? Not only my BA, but then I had to go on and get my master's degree. So then I want to continue to develop how this has experienced and affected and changed my life. Now, you want to be honest about it. I can tell you how it's affected and changed my life dramatically, but I don't want to lead them to a sob story. I just really want to be honest about, my work with Sanger Unified. That was with junior high kids. And, I knew that I didn't have the patience for that age. I'm, due to my background and personality, when they gave me problems, I was going to discipline them by cussing them out, right? I was going to tell them to shape up, right? And I knew I couldn't do that. So not that I could do that with college students, but, I could work more with college students than I can with the emotional development that junior high students are. Okay. So if you have a challenge or an obstacle to overcome, maybe this is where you want to put it in. Or you could put in some type of, experience and volunteer you had that shows, your leadership and how you grew from the work experience as well. Then we'll go on to the third paragraph. And now this is when you want to start talking about what your career goal is, if you know what it is and you had that already. Because in my previous paragraph, I'm going to talk about how I knew that I wanted to teach at the college level. I knew for me personally, it was just the emotional development at the time. But as I thought and mused upon it more, why I wanted to teach college level and why I wanted to be a college professor, it finally dawned on me that the reason I really wanted to do that was because I wanted to teach literature from my cultures while empowering students from underrepresented groups. Because when I was in college, I was the only Latino and or Asian in my classes. And what did I do? I didn't feel like I belonged there and I felt like an imposter. So I sat in the back of the classroom. And why did I sit in the back of the classroom? Because Shakespeare really wasn't culturally relevant to me. Beowulf and Mallory really wasn't culturally relevant to me. I couldn't see myself in the literature and the teaching. I couldn't hear my voice nor see that identity. And it wasn't until I had a professor when I took Asian American literature that opened my eyes. I didn't even know Asians wrote. I never read an Asian author in high school. I never read a Latino author in high school either. I didn't even know, they existed. That prompted me to go into ethnic studies a little bit more and have an ethnic studies approach when I teach English. And I became an expert or developed expertise in Latino literature, Asian American literature, African American literature, Native American literature, and then a little bit in the traditional literary canon. But it was because I couldn't see my identity in my voice and hear it that I needed to do that for other people from my culture. So now I want to do is I want to include detailed information on why I wanted to do this. If you're debating between careers and you don't know what they are yet, that's okay. Let the committee know that, hey, I might want to do this or I might want to do that. And let them know why you're attracted to each one of them and why you could perhaps be undecided. You can also put in here if there was any volunteer work, internship, leadership, or work experience that you had that helped discover that interest in your career, a significant experience that you can dramatize, that you can put at the beginning of the paragraph and say, because you did this, it led me to this. And I could actually begin this paragraph by talking about feeling invisible as a college student, as a student of color, feeling so invisible and feeling like an imposter in academia, which I didn't even feel very welcome to. We know who this educational system is set up for. And I didn't learn that until it was really too late, although I knew it by feeling disconnected from education in high school and at the beginning of my college career, okay? If you don't know what career you want to pursue, that's okay. Maybe you can go on to the next paragraph, and that is to talk about your educational goals. But maybe when you think and muse upon your educational goals, that will enable you to develop or identify what a career goal is going to be. So here in this is that, what is your educational goal? Why do you have this educational goal? What is it you want to do? I knew that I wanted to earn a bachelor's degree in English. Some of you know you want to go into business. Some of you want to go into psychology. Some of you want to go into computer science. So you know that that's the degree that you want. And then I knew I wanted to obtain a master's degree in English composition because I did my homework and I knew to teach minimally at a community college, I needed to have a master's degree. And then if I wanted to go into a 4-year, I eventually should have my PhD. So again, as I develop this educational goal about what I want to do, I again want to talk about why, I want to do this. So this could be different information, but if I already addressed it, then maybe I want to go into then including what schools I'm considering transferring to, why I want to go to those schools. And then if I haven't talked about any type of significant experiences that led me to that educational goal, then I might want to talk about it here. Paragraphs 3 and 4, career and educationals, can also be combined together if you find that it's more convenient to put it into one paragraph. But the point is that it should be addressed if you don't have enough in the career goal yet to develop them. But you can develop it separately, or you can combine it with your educational goals. And then lastly, you want to conclude, just like we do with any conclusion. I always teach my students the best conclusion, even though it's not the only one, is to summarize those main points and emphasize the last major point, right? So definitely you want to summarize your main points, but of all the main points that you summarize, what really makes you that ideal candidate? You want to emphasize that major last point, because that then gets to why you are a good candidate for scholarship. And this is not easy to do because a lot of us are very humble. It's hard for us to toot our own horns. Other people can do it much easier than we can, but you might find that this part is difficult, but you want to say, because of these circumstances, because of these episodes, because of these goals, you are, a good candidate to have somebody help fund your education to achieve these goals that you set out. Again, you want to remind them, the committee, in your concluding point here, why it's important for you to go to college. For me, being a first generation coming from working class field worker parents, why was it so important for me to go to college and break that cycle? Okay. I then also wanted to talk about why I feel it's important for me to earn this degree. And most importantly, how will you give back to your community? Because the scholarship donor is giving to their community by sponsoring a scholarship. So how are you going to give back? And you can do that by explaining how this scholarship is going to help you. Okay. So that is basically, it's about 5 paragraphs. That's about 500 words, but it's not your basic 5-paragraph essay with that thesis statement and then, subtopic A, B, and C in those paragraphs and concluding. It's going to be around 5 paragraphs. It may not be 5 paragraphs long. It definitely don't shove this all into 1 paragraph. Sometimes when I see those essays, it looks like that students began a free write and then they just expanded and they said, here's my essay. And it has no sense of paragraphing. It has no sense of topic sentence. If it has no sense of topic sentence, you really don't have, what are the subtopic points that you're going to be developing? Okay. So you really want to do that as well. And then I know we only have a little bit of time here, but I just want to go over a little bit of what to avoid, because I know we get that, and then I'll go into the chat to see what's in there. Okay, so one thing that you want to avoid in an essay is repetition, okay? So that means that don't repeat information contained elsewhere in the application. Sometimes students try to be more on the safe side and simply repeat the essay, repeat in the essay the same information that is in the application itself. And this strategy usually results in the committee member gaining no more insight into what drives the candidate from the rest, that drives the candidate or separates them from the rest of the application pool. Remember, readers already know your application. So if you say that you're an Alpha Gamma Sigma and a member of, a particular club at DVC, what the committee doesn't know is why you chose to participate in those activities and how your involvement in these activities is evidence of your particular interests and talents. And that would be the theme, really, of that essay. You want to avoid the essay that complains about circumstances rather than explains. Remember that the scholarship committee members want to know how resilient you are. While it is certainly okay to write about obstacles you face, we talked about that, what is important for the committee member is how you overcame that obstacle, not how terrible the obstacle was. Another thing that you want to avoid is an essay that discusses money or college ranking as motivation, okay? We know that we all want to attend college to earn more money, and we all want to attend the best and the most prestigious colleges that we can. But scholarship committee members who read your essay want to know that you are motivated by the love of learning, okay? So even though money or a school's ranking may be important to you, keep this information out of your essay. Fourthly, you want to not have an essay that relies on gimmicks rather than substance. What this means is a gimmicky essay is one in which the reader tries to get the committee's attention through some unconventional means. Usually this doesn't work. And this does not mean that your essay has to follow one set format. What it means is that gimmicks and cliche cannot replace substance and evidence. Fifthly, you want to avoid the essay that has claims in it that is not supported by the application. So this essay is a component of the application and is read within the context of the application. So a description of yourself as a top student in the school needs to be supported by your grades. Similarly, claims made about your extracurricular activities, volunteer internship experience should be backed up in the application. So for example, if you claim to have a lifelong ambition to save the environment, you would want this claim supported by involvement in environmental related activities. And lastly, you want an essay that you want to avoid that contains mechanical errors, cliches, or purple prose. It's too wordy. Although your reader is not grading your essay, remember, your essay or scrutinizing the grammar, a poorly written essay signals to a committee member that you are unfamiliar with the conventions of good writing or simply did not put enough time into composing your essay. Either way, there will be other applicants whose essays are more polished, so you really don't want to disadvantage yourself. And lastly, you don't want an essay that's too long or too short. Show that you know how to follow directions and that you read those directions. An essay that is too short may indicate carelessness. One that is too long may signal that you're arrogant. Remember that committee members have many other applications to read, so be sure that the limited time available to peruse your essay will be spent reading an essay that is appropriate in length, okay? In the end, what a committee member will ask themselves is, what do we know about the applicant as an individual? And those personal attributes generally come from the essay. All right, so